Good morning.
I love that it's just so exciting now.
I know it's like a whole recap of Live with Dan over the years, you know?
We're
Awesome.
we're probably 10 episodes away from our 100th episode.
I know. And we're a few months away from our first episode ever, right? I mean, like month wise. I think wasn't it September, October-ish, I think was the first one we did in 2020. So
Oh, I don't know.
we
I think I probably blocked it out.
well, live.
Oh, hi, Dan. I've missed you. I'm
I
so
know
happy
it's been a
to be
long time since
back.
I've seen you, you know?
Well, I mean, I guess I haven't seen you on Live with Dan. I did just see you IRL at IIEX, and shout out to everybody there. It was such a great event, and
Yeah.
shout out to the Green Book team.
It was awesome. Yeah. Good to
Yeah.
see everybody. Thanks for coming. And we held a good event too. So you guys went all out there. That was awesome.
I know. I cannot wait for Question Pro Palooza next year.
I know.
Danielle and I were like at dinner last night. We're like, okay, if we did like this many hats and then we brought a food truck, we could do this.
I know. Those hats were awesome though. Like everything was local to Texas. So the hats, the mugs was El Arroyo. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, it's down on 6th Street.
Yeah. So they
And
do
of
like
course,
this
Salt Lake.
sayings on there, you know, be the person who your dog thinks you are and that kind of stuff. So I know Mickey Brooks, he won that one. So
Woo!
yeah,
Well, I
awesome.
hope everyone watching is recovering. As you can tell, my voice is still recovering.
I know my voice was like cracking last night. I'm like, oh, this is probably time just to call it quits. I gotta go.
You're like 2-day conferences. That's
Yeah.
enough for me.
Yeah, that's been all day, but no, really good event. It was a lot super fun. So awesome.
Yeah. And we have a lot of really cool things coming up with the Question Pro team. We have a brand tracking webinar coming up next month. Dan has a packed Live with Dan schedule.
I know it's hard to get in. I was trying to get these people last night were like, hey, I want to come on Live with Dan. I'm like, you know, it's probably like August before I can get you on. So
oh my gosh. Dan, to everyone watching, you know, Dan is a minor celebrity. Some of us got our feelings hurt at the booth because is Dan here? Have you seen guys? Is Dan been here yet?
I'm a man of the people, Crystal. Okay.
Dan doesn't even have to wear his name tag. People already know who he is. It doesn't hurt that I literally had cards with your face that said
I
this.
know. And I brought some home too so I could show my kids. You know?
Be like, I really am famous.
Yeah.
But we have a lot coming up within the world of Question Pro. We also have our CXBS or CX behind the scenes monthly webinars, and Workforce has something that has a very long name, but I'm sure it's very well. It's with our partners at Water Cooler coming
That's
up
awesome.
next week, I believe. And so make sure you're checking out all of our upcoming events.
Yeah, and then I just want to give a quick plug. So I'll be in Toronto in, I guess, a week and a half for the Crick SMR event. That is on June 5th and 6th. So I'll be there. Question Pro will have a booth up there as well. So if you're going to that, feel free to stop by.
Do you need some help at the booth?
Maybe. I'll ping you after this.
I'll take the trip to Toronto. Well, what do we got going? Who's our guest today, Dan?
Today we have Valerie Peck, who is the founder of SuiteCX. So we wanted to bring her on and also let everybody know how we are rounding out our full tech stack in terms of all the offerings that we have. This is on the CX side, but I think it's still appropriate to talk about it because there are some use cases for research and just to get the word out of all the good things that we're doing. So we wanted to bring Valerie on and talk about all things journey mapping and SuiteCX.
I love that. Let's add her.
Awesome.
Valerie, hi all. I'm getting tired hearing all the stuff you guys are into. Wow. Dizzy, and I'll come to Toronto too. It has a great food scene.
It does. It really does have a great food scene. It's and the skyline and everything. It's really nice. It's a good city.
The last time I was in Toronto was 30 below. So I'm up for summer in Toronto.
You got to go when it's 30 degrees there, right? So
indeed,
Celsius,
indeed.
Awesome. Oh, well, Valerie, thanks for coming on. We've been wanting to have you on for a while, but I'm glad that we could finally get you on. So welcome.
Yep.
I know evidently there's a waiting list now.
I know. I'm honored. And I've been talking up all your research team. In fact, Patrick and I had a great chat yesterday about all the research we do that has all of your fingerprints all over it. So
nice.
We do tons of ethnographic and demographic and community. So sometime I'll share with you some of the research we just did for a couple of clients like I did with him. And he was quite surprised that research-driven revenue is where it's at.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I like hearing that for sure. So tell us a little bit about SuiteCX and why you started it. I'm kind of curious about the origin story too.
Sure. So I've been doing customer insight driven, whatever, acquisition, retention, growth for about 25 years. Yes, I'm old. You two youngins, had no idea that back in the day, you had butcher paper up on after you did a statistical segmentation, you really understood what your clients were doing from a channel and a behavior and a value perspective. Then you wanted to figure out what they were doing day to day. So we got a big piece of butcher paper and those wonderful little sticky notes in multiple colors with stars and arrows. And you put them up on the wall and you took notes on them and people scribbled on them. And then underneath you had the data flow and that looked like spaghetti strands. And then underneath that, you had this huge table where you literally printed up your website so that everyone could see what was happening at that moment in time. Now, then you took a picture of it, no cell phones. And you mailed it around to people, and then
a picture on like a camera. Then you printed the film.
Yeah, you put it on a camera. Well, you left it up on the wall, right? And then the little thing started falling off, and then you'd staple it. And God forbid, if you had to roll it up and take it home with you, half the things would fall off, right? So you're going to kill yourself now. It's like, where did these sticky notes come from? And then you did a word use case around every sticky note because there's a lot of information that happens at a touch point, right? People are doing things, they're thinking things, they're feeling things. There's data associated with it, how many come in, how many go out, all sorts of good stuff. There's no place on a sticky note for that.
Then sounds like a lot of work.
It is. That's why I look so old. And then you take that information and you say, well, where are the moments of truth and the pain points? Where am I abusing my customers? And how is it that I can stop? And that is the genesis of journey mapping. Because if you take all the robust data that your team has, that the communications teams have and everything, and you align it by when it's happening, a whole bunch of new information just explodes right at you.
Right.
And so that is the reason why you do what we call experience or journey mapping is just to take a little bit of a different viewpoint of what's going on and why it's happening. Because a lot of people forget that they need to understand that we're really feeling creatures who can think. So we got to figure out the whys of stuff. So after 20 years of doing that, we said we're done. And I challenged my significant other one night over dinner because he kept bragging that he could build a collaborative tool for me in 2013. And they said, show me. We weren't in Missouri at the time, but it worked. And he developed the first prototype of SuiteCX, which really looked like sticky notes on butcher paper.
But obviously digital, right? So
digital. And then I could just take a PDF of it and mail it around, or people could come in on Zoom and everybody could get in the tool and work on it. And once they got over deleting everybody's touch points and fooling around when moving them, that was the fun part. You started having three-dimensional, very productive agile workshops.
Right.
So then people said, I want stories. This isn't good enough. I want a storyboard, or I want a process. And so we kept developing the tool, and we actually developed it just for ourselves because it was just so much easier than that other process, right? Because then you do an Excel spreadsheet and you collect the findings, and then you do another one with recommendations, and then you prioritize, and you get to the short list of things to do, right? Do now, do later, do not. And so clients kept saying, can we license this? And so we said, sure, why not? So we started SuiteCX. We had no concept that this would actually be a software tool, and even less concept that people would want to license it, or like with Question Pro, that we fit really neatly in the space between research, surveys, closed loop, and EX, because almost all of our clients do EX studies as well, because you know, happy cows make for great cream. If you have happy employees and they are enabled to do their jobs, and you have the research and the insight to do it, boom, you've got a really good set of insights.
Yeah, no, and what I love about your story is you kind of like a lot of good origin stories. It was around scratching your own itch, right? Like you're like, I'm tired of the butcher paper on the wall with the Post-its, and you know, challenge your significant other at the time, like, build me, you know, I can build, you can say, I can build you something, and then it happened. So I love how it developed into a product, into a business. That's awesome. What can you give us an example of like a case study or a good use case where SuiteCX, you know, really worked out and helped a particular client?
Sure. So I just finished a major project with a client that we've had for a long time, actually. The first project we did, we went through that same process I just described, is looking at their customers and segmenting them and then understanding what they were thinking and feeling and doing. And once we got done with that, we stepped back and said, well, what could we do differently around how we market? And what could we do differently? They had 28 different companies, and none of them worked together. And we said, well, which companies look like they should be able to work together, or we start with one and end with the other? And so we created a marketing plan for them and then tied that into their customer database through journey orchestration. And in 4 months, they dropped 8% of new revenue to their bottom line.
Wow.
Because they knew it, you know, you say, gee, the right message to the right person at the right time. Well, we actually know what the right message is for the right people at the right time.
Right.
And it's not lost on a sticky note.
Yep. Without being creepy, you can have a really great relationship over time and build much more loyalty and stickiness. So that's a great example. And now, 10 years from then, we just came back and did another review of one of their divisions. And I was forced to go on a cruise between Lisbon and Barcelona, and one of my other team members
we're
went to
doing
Italy
our jobs wrong.
I know, right?
I know. You got to pick your clients right, Crystal.
Yeah.
And so we did some outside-in research, aka mystery shopping, with a lot of structure, right?
Yeah.
And again, we started identifying the fact that, gee, they were focusing all their time on the customers that have come on, believe it or not, 10, 15, 20 cruises. And they forgot the new ones. The new ones were the ones that needed more attention. Because getting between the first to the second to the third trip, that's the hard part. And they had no idea.
And then there's probably like a tipping point where you could not stop nurturing them, but they self-nurture.
Yep, the third trip. At the third trip, they're smart. They know what they want. They know where they want to go. And it's boom. They're with 3 trips, they're good for 10. And so the data told this incredible story. And then we did a number of journey maps. We did persona level ones, and then we did what my business partner calls a garbage one, where you track every single touch and you understand in minute detail how to move people forward through the buying process and the rebuying process, right? So everything we do is focused on acquisition, retention, and growth. Because if you're not following the money, you're going to be out of a job pretty quick.
How nuanced do the touch points get then when you do the garbage one? Like, is it like from purchasing all the way to when they leave the ship?
All the way from, yep, I'm thinking of a vacation. So the first life cycle is inspiration, when you're looking out the window and you're on a really long conference call and you're thinking, well, Greece, Alaska, maybe I should. Right. So it's from that very point when they're thinking about it, and then they say, how about a vacation, all the way through them posting stuff on social media about what a fabulous trip they had. Every single touch point. So in this particular client's project, I think we had 120 over a period of time. You know, and again, we know because we have the data, how often they travel, when they travel, what place they traveled to. We actually know if they went somewhere like the Caribbean, that their next trip's going to be Alaska. And then their third trip's going to be somewhere in the Mediterranean. So we actually know, and you can just plant the information and boom, that's what they're looking for.
Got it. That makes
Yep.
sense.
Yep.
Wait, how do you, so when you say plant the information, that's what you're trying to do in a not creepy way in the customer journey.
Yeah, it just happens. Your Facebook has, Alaska on it.
Right. It just happens.
Yeah.
It just happens, or it just happens that we have a sale and they get a postcard that says, hey, Alaska's on sale this year.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Have you seen customer journey insights gone wrong towards the consumer where it does get that weird line?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you do the creepy stuff, like Cambridge Analytics, and you, first of all, you start following customers and a creepy amount of stuff comes up, right?
Mattress.
Right. Yeah.
As soon as you look for a mattress, all you see is mattress.
Or you ask them, would you like information? And they say no, and you keep sending them information. So things like that happen all the time in marketing. It's more of a, kind of a privacy and marketing issue as you go through.
Right.
But usually if you put your intent out there and say, we'd like to use this information with you and share the right information at the right time, they are almost always open to, and if you email them every single day, I'm sure you get those junk, right? So that's just basic business. So
I'm thinking that like at some point, Val, you got like a small, like, I don't know, like message in a bottle, like hand delivered to your house. And you're like, why is this in my house? How did they know?
Yeah. Well, and again, the more you build a relationship, which is what we all do here at Question Pro, the more likely you are that people are going to welcome those interactions, as long as you do them intelligently and you do them with personality and you do them with a smart intent. People welcome them. It's just when bad actors start robo-dialing and all the other things we all love to hate happen. And that's where you do a journey, because people start attriting, right? So there is, sad but true, there is almost no correlation between satisfaction or net promoter score and repurchase. There is almost a 90% correlation between bad things happening or negative problems that aren't fixed and attrition. So everybody chases that net promoter score or that CSAT score. Right. And the reality is if they were doing find and fix programs, doing what we do every day, day in and day out, they would have such a better outcome.
Interesting.
So then, Valerie, how do you measure, like, so you do you come up with the journey mapping, the different touch points, and see where you want to, like, I'll put it as, like, come up with change or some new process, messaging, or change the product. Then are you not measuring it with NPS? Are you measuring it with satisfaction, or how does that process work then?
So if you had NPS, for instance, at every key juncture, as someone goes down a life cycle, or at a moment of truth, or something NPS like, like, you go in the bathroom at the airport and you have the little red, green, and yellow thing, right? There's a lot of ways of measuring success, including how many people go from point A to point B. So click streams are great metrics to understand what's going on across a journey. So if at the very end you ask, how much do you love me? And someone says not very much, then you don't know when, right? So you can ask them, when did our relationship start to fail? But oftentimes they just don't say anything, or they'll say it's the price or something like that. So it's always much better to have multiple metrics and understand where your pain points are and measure those using the metrics of that pain point. So maybe it's a conversion or an unsub, or you walk into the store and you walk out of the store without buying anything, right? So there's lots of ways of knowing this. We've just started using a couple of crutches that now have I think gotten a little bit of, I'll call it survey fatigue.
Got it. So you don't need this. I mean, you're saying that you can measure, I guess, the effects just based on normal things that you're already collecting. Like you said, unsubscribes, or, if everyone's going to this website all of a sudden based on our different messaging, then So it's not like you always need like a formal kind of program to measure kind of what's happening based on a change that you implemented.
Yeah, you should have some marketing, sales, and service metrics. So in service, you have all those website and portal and call center metrics. Those all tell the story that you need to have. Now, it's nice to have other things around, again, relationships. You well know there's transactional relationship, different kinds of surveys for different things and different kinds of metrics.
Yeah.
But the more the merrier. But having them across the life cycle is the key difference. Because if you always wait till the end, first of all, you can't do anything to save yourself in the middle if something's going wrong, right? So for an expensive purchase like a $100,000 Lexus, you kind of want to know if something's going wrong in the middle.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm spending $100,000 on a Lexus.
Yeah, well, there are those. I just heard that the new Aston Martin that's going to be an electric vehicle is going to be $470,000.
Nice.
So I'm sure the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and the UK royal family will have a fleet, but not me so much.
It's like I can buy a house down the street for that.
No kidding. Yeah. So it's looking at data and journeys and what people are thinking and doing and feeling across a continuum that gives you more knowledge, right? I have another client who uses the same process to decide what they're going to build and where they're going to build it from an entertainment facility, because they can look at a 25-mile radius and say, well, who lives there and what are their preferences and what are they thinking and doing from an entertainment perspective? Bingo. Right. So it's a lot more powerful than just, knowing whether or not they're going to buy the next widget. Got
it. A lot of different use cases. Then I mean, coming into this, I thought, well, there's kind of one use case, but there's multiple that you can really adapt and put in and use on the platform. So that's great. What would you say? What are the most fun sort of use cases for you? What do you like to work on the most?
She obviously likes to go on cruises.
I know, okay.
I did have to go to Australia this year. Yeah, I have another great client that's an adventure company, so I did get to go to New Zealand this year and test out their adventure. Nice. But so those are fun. The outside-in research is fun, but the reality is that's usually the ice cream on the cake. But I'm a data geek, so I just love looking at segments and naming segments. That's my most fun. My statistician and I fight over naming segments. So is it Molly Millennial or Samantha Senior? Or if it's a healthcare company, is it, Molly Medical? So yeah, we have a lot of fun doing that kind of thing. Because research is I'm a psych major that had to go into journey mapping and marketing to make a living. But getting inside people's heads is so much fun.
Yeah, but it probably helps out. I mean, that background and the industry that we're in. So that's great.
Yep. So who knew that statistics was interesting?
If they would teach statistics in college with use cases, it would be much more interesting.
Exactly. Looking at the randomness of a fly on the wall is not interesting.
But then they teach it like math, and you're like, I don't like math.
Seriously. Yeah, seriously. When I started out at the phone company, and when I realized that, how long that line was at Disney is statistics. Wow.
Yeah.
How soon is it before I run out of money? Statistics.
Practical use cases, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, we are so glad that you've joined us at Question Pro.
As am I.
And, I know that I'm going to say this because Dan won't say it, but all products are created equal at Question Pro.
No, they are. I love it. I just like mine a little bit more. That's all.
Well, we're thrilled. We're the little speck that's number one in our little category in Forrester and Quadrant, Spark, and everybody. Yeah. And every time I look at that, and if my parents were alive and I pointed that out, they said, "Yeah, that's good, but what are you going to do tomorrow?" But it is fun to have something that you've created that actually has a great use. And, you know, when I sit on a plane and they say, well, what do you do for a living? And I said, well, I help companies stop abusing their customers.
Nice. That's a good opening line. I like that.
So yeah, and I'm just blessed with great customers. I have one that's a medical device company, and when you do the interviews of the individuals that are using the product, and they say, and you say, well, why is it interesting for you to have this product? And they said, well, I can send my son or daughter off to school and know if they've had lunch. And I know they're going to wake up in the morning because an alarm will go off if there's something going wrong with their blood sugar. That is just powerful to be able to do things like that and help bring more of that to the world.
Yeah, literally life-changing, you know? I mean,
yeah, it is.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Awesome. Well, Valerie, yeah, thanks so much for coming on today. We really appreciate it. And we'll have to have you on maybe again sometime further in the journey and see what's happening.
I know. I want to hear more about these adventure experiences.
Yeah, I'll bring a journey map along. I'll put it in the background as a poster when we
just bring some Post-its.
Yeah, some of these things, one of them was 7 foot long by 5 foot high, and I carried it. It didn't fall off because it was all there. I carried it onto the plane, and everybody was like, "What is that?"
I
awesome.
love that. Well, thank you so much for being here, Val. We really appreciate it. And you can catch me, Val, and Dan at Question Pro X Day in October, where Val will be probably, but 100% guaranteed doing a workshop about
some maps.
Get the butcher paper and Post-it notes ready, Crystal.
Right?
Exactly. Not. We will do it all in video.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. It'll be all online, so it'll be good.
Exactly, with a projector instead of sticky notes.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Exactly.
And everybody, keep an eye out. We might have a surprise guest next Friday, and we have a full summer full of Live with Dan Fridays already with guests lined up and ready to go, and we are so excited. Dan, anything else today before we go?
No, I think that's it. Have a good Memorial Day weekend, and we'll see you all next Friday.
Yeah, don't do anything we wouldn't do.
Yeah, I'm out of here. This is the last thing I'm doing today. So.
Dan's like, I am out of here. Awesome. So good, guys.
All right, thanks again, Val.
Take care. Rest your voices.
Bye.
Bye.